My name is Judith Aguayo, class of 2010.
Okay. Okay. So I think we'll be ready to get started whenever you guys are ready.
Wait, before we start, how do you spell your last name?
Aguayo. A-Y-O. Mm-hmm.
Actually, do you mind pulling it just a little closer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just don't want to rip it off of the table. How about that? How's that? A little more?
That's actually perfect. Or you can just like scoot your chair over too if you feel like you're too far.
Is it not,
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Is it ready to start now?
Yeah, we're ready when you are.
Awesome. Alright, welcome Judith to the St. Mary's Media Center. First question I'd like to ask you is, what do you remember of the conditions at St. Mary's that led students to mobilize for change when you were a student here?
So what I remember is, so it was our senior year, and I think it wasn't one event from what I remember. And I was speaking with someone else who's on this project, Malena. I was speaking to her actually on the way here, and we were just talking about how this is as we remember, and it was 16 years ago, you know. So this is from what we remember, or from what I remember 16 years ago. I remember being a senior, and I remember having experiences throughout my St. Mary's, throughout my time at St. Mary's, and it was probably a culmination of things, but by senior year, as we've talked about in other interviews, I feel like not only was I more sure of who I am and what who I am in comparison to St. Mary's, or who I was as a St. Mary's student, and who I was as a person, because I had studied abroad, like I had more confidence in myself, and realizing like, oh, okay, maybe that thing that happened, maybe that wasn't cool, and maybe, you know, myself and other students can do something about it. And so what I do remember, and I do believe it was senior year, there was also an incident where there was, I don't remember specifically what it was, but it was an attack of racism against a black student on campus. But we were also already joining other protests, like outside of school. We were already active, I would say. But yeah, we also felt that our classrooms didn't have maybe, that we weren't reading material that was more, where we identified with the material. So again, that was throughout the 4 years, right? That's something that by the end of 4 years, you're like, hey, the school could have done a better job of this. Also, another thing would be faculty, having more faculty, having the faculty be more reflective of who we are also, meaning having faculty that were of races that we were, you know, where we could see ourselves in the faculty. And the students, we were very minority, like we were a minority on campus, and you could just see it. Sorry, how's it so far?
It's going great.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just, yeah,
That's a wonderful,
just warming up.
Like, yeah, exactly, and it gives us like a really good understanding of what St. Mary's was like when you were going here, and just understanding the different factors that led to mobilizing for change at the school. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Were those student protests at St. Mary's connected to larger societal issues taking place during those times?
Yeah, so and I have a hard time remembering if it was junior year or senior year, but I did remember that we were the one protest I do remember going, and I do have pictures, and I need to send them to you guys. But
So,
it was at Berkeley, just the city of Berkeley, or maybe it was UC Berkeley, but we were at UC Berkeley most likely, and the protest was about education, like making education probably accessible to everyone, free education, probably higher education, I think, is what it was. So that was one of the protests. But leading up to the protest at St. Mary's, I remember the night before I decided to join, there was a gathering of students. It was like a night visual, and it was regarding, it was Take Back the Night. And I can give you more information about what that is, because I can't remember right now. But it is, I think it's regarding women who have been abused, and the need to speak out, or the ability to do it, or like advocating for women to speak out, and to not be afraid to speak out. So that I think that was one of the things that happened. Another thing that led, like, prior to the protest, I wasn't part of it, but I remember students had like tape over their mouths, and there were just like different, I guess, demonstrations, I think is the right term, before leading to that. There was, around that time, gay marriage was a big topic outside of St. Mary's, like outside in society, and I think those protests, or the conversations that were being had around that time, we were having them, but in a school, in a smaller setting, and I think it was very reflective of the times. Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It helps like just kind of understand like where our society was kind of at
Yeah, the
that
context.
time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What role, if any, did you take in any of those campaigns for justice at the college? If you were part of the campaign, what did the coordination between students on campus look like?
Okay. So I was part of our struggle. I joined by the time that they were organizing, because we also did a fasting while we were protesting. So it was also around this time. It was April. It was around like spring break. I think it might have been after spring break, because I do remember it being really quick, like our protest maybe a couple weeks after, and then graduation. So it was in a very short span of time.
Was this camping out on Chavois?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that was the protest, right? Was a camping out, and we had maybe it was for a week, I want to say. Again, I can give you better details, but I just remember it was about a week. It didn't go longer than a week, and by the time I joined, like I said, we were trying to figure out what the fasting would be like, and what food would be like, who was gonna bring gear, and by the time we started, we had gear. Some people donated what they had, some people brought what they had. We had faculty and staff donating gear to our protest. There was fire. Somehow we had a campfire set up. So I don't know how that happened, but we were safe, obviously. Nothing happened. And a couple of professors would also stop by while we were protesting, either at night or during the day, just to have conversation. And that was the idea, because there were a lot of people that didn't know what was happening, what was going on, why there were people on campus camping out, and so we were open to having those conversations. But that is not what the question was.
Oh, that's awesome.
What the coordination was. Yeah, so there, I guess in a way we did divide things amongst ourselves, who was going to be responsible for what. I don't remember what I was responsible for at the moment, but again, there was someone, for example, I think I helped maybe distribute the food in the morning, because I do remember being there super early. So there was, I don't know if it was some instrument to wake us up. I don't know if it was a drum or what it was, but it was because it was sunrise. We were fasting, so at sunrise we were having food, and it wasn't until sunset that we had dinner again. And I remember on the last day, I think Sodexo donated some food to us. I do remember that day on the last day, so that was pretty huge because we didn't have to pay for that food.
Thank you. That's really cool that you got like so many different people involved through the chapel fast, the protests, talking to faculty. It like really progressed the movement forward. How are you feeling either witnessing the students mobilizing or being a part of the student protests on campus at that time?
Yeah, so at first, I think like everyone, I was curious, like, hey, what's happening? Also, I saw my friends there, so I'm like, hey, what are they doing? What are they up to? And I feel like when anyone, even now, has something to say and you definitely stick out, especially around now, right? But then, as a student of St. Mary's, it was something that you couldn't ignore. And it was something that somehow or another you formed an opinion, whether negative or positive. And for me, I was hearing criticism from even other students of color about it, right? That I feel like that's pretty natural. You're not always gonna be all about what the other person of color is doing, or you can't assume. And so I was curious, and I was listening to other people's opinions, but I knew, like I said, by then I knew kind of like who I was and what I believed in, and I thought that this was the right thing to do. And so I decided to join, and so my feeling was positive. Like I felt like this was the right thing to do and the right time to do it too.
That's awesome. Yeah, just having that like courage to go forth with the movement, I think, says a lot because a lot of times fear can be something that holds us back in those situations.
Oh, for sure. That's a really good point. I feel like you do have fear, right? What is everybody else gonna think about you while you're doing this? And I think I just didn't care. So, and again, my friends were there, so I felt like if they're doing it, and it wasn't in a pressure kind of way. It was just like, yeah, I think we're on the same page, But yes, fear can be a big factor. But again, also when you're a senior, you're just like, when you're a senior in high school, you think you're the coolest thing too. But a senior in college, it's also like, I don't really care what people think, and like I don't really have much to lose. Like I'm about to leave, I might as well leave feeling like I did something, like I spoke up.
Do you remember if any criticism that you did face from other people, like specifically?
Yeah, I do remember someone making a comment like, well, at least you're there, like keeping them in check. And I was like, that's not why I'm there. You're not the boss of me, type of thing. Or like,
So would you call that false support?
On my behalf?
What they were saying?
What they were saying?
Like false support?
Yeah, maybe, but it's an opinion, so, and it didn't matter because again, I knew why I was there, and that friendship, or just, it wasn't, you couldn't say it was a friendship. It was just someone I knew. Everyone is so close, or everybody, because it's such a small school, so it really didn't like bend me one way or the other.
Yeah.
That's good. Kind of on a similar note, how did the college administration respond to the student protests? How did your families and friends respond? And what about other students on campus, or even faculty at SMC? What was their response like, and what was their response to what was happening in particular?
Okay, so I wasn't involved in some of the things, but when some of the people from our struggle talked to the admin, there were conversations happening. So it wasn't, we were following some sort of like there's a protocol, right? When you're, I just wasn't involved in it. But what we were remembering as I was calling Malena is that the student government was actually who was giving us the hardest time, because we were trying to get spaces for ourselves, or just so that's where we faced it, which is like, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
That's where it would start, where the with your own peers.
Interesting. Yeah.
But let's see, my family. I do remember I'm so glad you sent me these ahead of time, because I was remembering that I was fasting, and maybe it was more than a week, because there was a weekend where I went back home. I don't live too far from here, or my hometown's not too far from here. I went back home for maybe a wedding, or I think it was a quinceañera, and I told my mom, I'm not gonna have any food because we're fasting. So I kept my fast, and that must have been over a weekend. So again, it was a long time ago, so I'm sorry. I don't have it all straight. But how my family reacted to it was, they weren't surprised, again, because I had been like active throughout the 4 years, and not just protesting, but just like very active on campus. But they were probably maybe worried, like, why aren't you eating, as a parent? But generally they weren't saying like, no, you shouldn't be doing that or anything like that. They were pretty supportive. My friends, I did tell you guys a little bit about that, how even now there are some of my roommates were like, yeah, I didn't really know what was going on. And I think what happens, especially with that person that made that comment, she was an integral major. Another one was like, I think it depends on your major. Like, those are the people that you're going to be hanging out with. Those are the people, like, if you're going to hear any opinion, it's going to be from them, So I just understood that that's where that came from. But again, no one was telling me, Judith, you shouldn't be doing that, as far as my close friends. Other students or even faculty, this is another thing I was trying to remember with Malena, like so there was an advisor for one of the clubs on campus, but we didn't really have a single faculty person, let's say like sponsor, or I don't know, be like our advisor. I think they treated us very much like we were adults, and we were making a decision as adults to protest on campus, just like you would outside of campus, like as an adult, the choices that you make as an adult. But I do feel support. Again, there were different faculty that would come and talk to us and ask us about what we were doing.
And how were some of those conversations, like what were some of those conversations like with faculty? Were they like just kind of curious? Were they wanting to support the students, or if you could tell us a little bit about that?
I would say I wasn't, because we were also going to our classes. We didn't stop, going to classes, attending our class. But I feel, just from what I overheard, because I wasn't part of those conversations, I just would see them like stop by and talk. I would feel like it was pretty 50-50, like people being supportive and then people wanting to like challenge, which is fine. Yeah.
Wow.
And normal.
Yeah. What do you think your stories of resistance at why do you think your stories of resistance at St. Mary's are not known? What do you think other generations of students could learn from your experience?
Yeah, this is a pretty cool question, because I feel like, again, what's happening inside of campus, you could kind of maybe see what's happening outside of campus, and if there's anyone, or let's say an institution not wanting you to know what was happening or what the history of it is, that says a lot. I'm just gonna say that. But also, I will say personally, I think why I didn't continue to be involved on campus is because when you graduate, or for me, in my case, I walked. I still had a class that, I think it was like an upper division class that I needed to retake. But I took a break from school because I was so burnt out. And I didn't come back for like another 2 years. So technically my graduating class is a different year. But I still identify with 2010 because I walked then. So what I'm trying to say is, like, you have your own, like, relationship with St. Mary's, like, and you have to work through that in order. So it's hard to be doing that and also maybe staying involved, because I know the next year there was also, some sort of either demonstration or involvement, but we, as since we had graduated, it's not like we came back to support them. So I'm just saying, personally, that's if there isn't anyone reminding you of that history, then it for sure is going to be erased, or maybe just not talked about, because it's just like, oh, that was so last year, like, this is the new year and we have other things going on campus. Yeah, but I think it is cool what you guys are doing, because when we were protesting, we thought I think I mentioned, we thought we were the first ones to protest at St. Mary's, but as we've learned, like, there's a history of students protesting at St. Mary's. Yeah.
It's fascinating to learn that it's almost like different waves, different cycles, kind of moving us forward into like more acceptance here at the school.
Yeah.
And in that kind of same vein, do you have any advice or suggestions for St. Mary's students of this generation?
I will say I don't know what it's like to be a St. Mary's student, in this generation, but I do think that what year are you guys?
I am we're both sophomores.
Sophomore.
So we graduate 2028.
Okay.
I'm a senior.
You're a senior.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, to look back at your time here at St. Mary's, and if you had any feedback, now would be the time, to speak up. And even as a sophomore, or as as you continue through your time here at St. Mary's, just keep in mind, like, I was very observant. I think and this is just how I am personally, I'm just gonna observe, and then if I have something to say, I will say something, So I guess it also depends on you and your personality, and how much does it bother you that X thing happened on campus or happened to someone else that wasn't you, that wasn't a personal attack to you. Like, do you think that's how things should be at St. Mary's? Do you think that should be happening outside in the world? Yeah, those are the kind of things that I would think about.
Yeah, I think, like, again, I'm more of like that observant thing type, and I think just seeing people, like, from especially like, racial inequities that have happened here on campus, and like, we were talking about them in class like the other day, but like, I feel like there's so many people that have like strong opinions about it, but sometimes I don't know if there's always like a space for people to know that they can like do like what you guys did, what people did in the 70s. Like, that's not like, I feel like now it's so much, I feel like it's grown so much to have a lot of awareness about like minority groups, but that just be like the awareness of it, and like not like when and just because we have the awareness, just because like we're reading texts or articles or things like that, or even just maybe talking about it, that like when stuff does happen, that there's no space to go and like protest, in like a big way. And at least, I mean, I haven't really seen like any big, protests on campus from things that I know that have like hurt a lot of people and people have a lot of strong feelings about too. So I think it's like really good for people to know. Like, I think we were talking about it in our class. We were talking about how like we want people to like in our seminar classes read not like big world kind of like protesting, but like what happened at St. Mary's, because there's some like really interesting stuff. think nobody knows about it. Like, nobody knows, like, all the protests that went on. Nobody knows, like, how, how big of an impact it made on the school and, like, why we are the way we are today. So, I don't know. At least this class has taught me that, but I don't really think a lot of other classes teach the same things.
Yeah, are having the same conversations. Yeah. Almost, like I was saying, like almost like living in a different reality.
Yeah.
You know, and if it's not like in your face, you're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I do think if there's a difference between when I was here on campus and now, you know, social media is just huge compared to like when we started. That's when Instagram started, or yeah, and Facebook. I think it was like my freshman year, and you had to have a .edu email to even get an account, you know, so it was
Really?
very specific. Sorry, I'm like aging myself, but what I'm trying to say is like there is a way of, or I feel like there is truth in how much maybe your generation is maybe desensitized because it's just like it's in your face, and it's not just what's on campus.
Yeah.
It's like what's going on in the world, what's going on like thousands of miles away from you. But maybe what's missing. So it's like it's not like you're not aware. Your generation is not aware. But sorry, there's something in my nose. It's not that your generation is not aware, but maybe there is maybe what you brought up, the theme of fear, like what are people gonna think? But maybe also like not knowing that you can speak up and you can do something about it and that you have the right to, you know. Maybe a third thing is like that you would have support, you know, of other faculty members or staff on campus. And I do feel like, you know, I had a good relationship with faculty and staff, so that's why I felt like safe doing that.
That's I think so key, like having someone in your corner when you're going through those different struggles and protests, because it really helps to keep giving you that motivation to go forward. In addition to knowing that like the cause is worth it, you know that you have people supporting you. I know you talked a little bit last time about some of those people that were supporting you in these different protests. You want to talk a little bit about some of them, if you don't mind?
Could you remind me?
I think a theater professor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the people that I feel were in my corner, right? I will, there's an English professor, Denise Witzig. She's no longer at St. Mary's, but she was just super cool. I remember just feeling supported and not judged, you know. I spoke about Mirna Santiago, who was the advisor for Hermandad, is what Malena told me. So, and again, it wasn't that they were necessarily out there camping with us, but we still felt, one, she's a person of color, a faculty person of color. So if anything came up, I think we felt like we could go and reach out to her, you know. I did speak about Reed Davis too. I do remember, sorry, I'm like trying to remember, I'm visualizing, him stopping by, and having conversations with us. But yeah, and funny enough, I actually I did have him for a short time. I took like a theater class. It was like theater, art, and music class, and he was one of my professors. But Denise was my English professor at one point, but Miriam was not. So, but I still felt supported and felt like I could come to her. So there was that sense of sorry.
Like unity almost amongst staff and students.
Yeah, or where they weren't closed off, where it felt like it was breaking a boundary, like going to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what qualities do those professors have that, you know, made them the people to go to, that made them the, you know, the people that you felt like could actually do something, and you could actually share.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, because I did have some of them in class, I kind of knew like what their mindset and opinion of like worldly events were, or like, and that they were similar to me. So again, that is why it's important to have people that are reflective of like you, what you look like, what, even your religion, your what you believe in, what sort of things you believe in. I think, yeah, it's important to have diversity.
Yeah, that's definitely important. I just had a quick question about the Our Struggle group
Yeah.
that you were part of. Do you know how that came to be, or kind of what your like mission was with Our Struggle?
Sure. So, our struggle, from what I remember, I think there was an open mic night, and I think students were getting comfortable speaking up, like either through poetry or music, or just going up there and just speaking like what was on their minds. And I think that was what initiated it, right? Initiated people having conversations like, hey, yeah, I think the same way, or like, yeah, why are things that way? And then a separate group started meeting. Again, I wasn't part of that initial group until towards the end when we were organizing, I guess, the logistics of what the camp out was going to be. And the camp out, like I said, was about a week, maybe a week and a half, or maybe even 2 weeks. But it was on chapel lawn. It wasn't inside the chapel. We didn't like sleep in there. We were on the lawn. And it was a pretty big group. There were some people that couldn't camp out with us, but then the day that, like maybe on the first day, they did show up. We had our demands. We took a big picture. I do have that image for you guys. And sorry, what was the question?
Oh no, it's just, yeah, that's perfect. Kind of describing
What
Our
it was.
Struggle. Yeah, like what it was and like how that played out.
Yeah.
That was the chapel lawn protest, right? The
Yeah,
protest and
we didn't call it that, so it's interesting that you guys are calling it that.
But what did you
What
guys
did
call
you
it?
call it?
Just Our Struggle. It was.
So
Mhm.
our struggle like was that protest.
Yes.
Like, that's what it was called.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Our Struggle.
Okay.
But I like hearing, what
Yeah.
you all call it,
Yeah.
chapel lawn protest. But I guess part of the conversations, that's how we came up with demands, right? And again, I did say I got involved because I was working closely with Sodexo workers, and I wanted to make sure that what they were asking for was part of the demands, and that's why I had joined. But I also agreed with the other demands that were on there too.
What were some of the things the workers were asking for?
Well, the thing they were asking for was to become unionized.
Okay. Yes. I
Uh-huh.
remember that.
Mhm.
And what would that like? What would that change for them? Like, what would being unionized change for like their lives
Yeah.
and their jobs? What do you think?
I mean, from off the top of my head, I think job security. I think there's different reasons why you would want to unionize, and I think the majority of them felt like that it was they benefited from it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just off the top of my head, because again, it was 16 years ago.
No worries. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Just it's like you're making like a positive impact in their lives too,
Yeah.
in addition to
But I bet you could go up and ask them, like, because what I think happened was by the next year they did unionize, and so if nothing changed, then they should be unionized now. So you could easily go up to maybe someone that has been here for about 16 years if they're still here. And I know there are a couple staff because I recognize them and I've said hi last time I was on campus. So you could ask them like, hey, has life been better that you've been unionized? That could be a cool like
Ooh,
follow up.
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I like that idea too. Do you remember what some of the other demands were on that list for
Yeah, I talked a little bit about having more books, especially in seminar, that reflect. And I think towards senior year you start to have a little bit more of that, but definitely reading more material that have people of color in it, faculty and staff, to have more people, and maybe more support. I think it was like more support for people of color on campus, because the only thing we really had, from what I remember, is high potential program, but we didn't have more. That, from what I can remember, that's all the resources really that there was, and not everyone was in the high potential program. But I heard it was great. I heard the people that were in it. But I also, high potential wasn't specifically for people of color too. Just the majority may have been. Yeah.
That makes sense. Are there any other details that really stood out to you from our struggle, or just from your time at St. Mary's related to the activism?
I guess maybe like what life was like after. I definitely felt like, hey, we saw something that wasn't working. We decided to speak about it, and we did get to see. There wasn't like that instant gratification. Like, again, what I had hoped for didn't happen until the next year. Oh, and I think one of the demands was to have an ethnic studies major. Yeah, I think that's what your professor said. Like, he said if it wasn't for our struggle, he wouldn't have a job, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the demands too. And like I said, I can bring a list. It would have been great to have it for you guys today, but
Okay, no worries.
I will have it so we can piece it all together.
Yeah.
What can I ask? Like, do you remember any other groups that were on campus that were doing like activism things? Like, was there like a Black Student Union or anything like that?
Yeah, so that's I guess that's what I'm referring to when I say, like, for example, we were going out to protest. For example, like I was saying, there was same-sex marriage. That was a hot issue around the time. I'm not LGBTQ. I had LGBTQ friends, so I guess I'm an ally, right? At that time, we were still at like LGBTQ plus, and then maybe A. At that time, now there's like way more. But what I'm trying to say is that our struggle was composed of not
All
just
the groups.
people of color, but like feminists, LGBTQ, there Black people from, maybe not everyone from Black Student Union, but there were Black students there that maybe were part of that. But what I'm saying is, it wasn't just people of color. It was we were all a very mixed group of students. Yeah, that year at our struggle, especially the core group of organizers. It wasn't, again, it wasn't just the Latino students. There was, like, I remember a couple white friends who were also LGBTQ, Black friends that were, we were just, it was a good mix. Yeah, it happened to be that way,
Yeah,
almost like perfect, like everyone was represented is what I'm trying to say.
That's awesome.
And we were all in it. That was the whole point. Our struggle is tied with yours. So the fact that, let's say, my struggle is, I'll just say that I don't feel represented on campus. The idea is that someone that doesn't look like me feels, hey, what you're going through matters to me. So that's why our struggle is tied with yours. So someone from LGBTQ, if something happens in their community, that means that matters to me. And I really do believe it. I know you can see it through. Like, I really do believe it. And that's why I was there, It wasn't performative at all. And I don't want to romanticize it, but that is just how I felt at the time. And I still do to this day.
Yeah, that is truly amazing, because we are all like tied in, we are all like united in this like struggle, whether we're all part of like the human experience. When one of us suffers, we all suffer. So that is beautiful.
Mhm.
Like, you guys like all came together to support
Yeah.
each other.
And outside of it, like, you see things happening in the world, and I still feel that way. So I am affected by other things happening, in the world that aren't necessarily directly happening to me in real time. But again, that was the point. That was the idea.
I think we're good for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us,
Cool.
and just talk about
You guys are sweet. Thank you so much.
Of course.